All right. There are times, sometimes I am reading the news, watching TV, and I realize that I see the world like so differently from a lot of people that I start to question myself. Like, is it me? If everybody else is seeing one thing and I'm seeing something else, maybe it's me. But I'll tell you the difference. I'll tell you the way I look at the news that I think is different from the way most people look at the news. Most people look at the news and they ask, what's happening? And that's how they judge the news. Is something bad happening? Is something good happening? Absolutely valid. I do that too. But I also ask myself, what do I want? Where am I going? What do I want? So for instance, I mean, this is true in my ordinary life. A lot of people will say, well, some book you have comes out, nobody buys it. Did I write it to be a bestseller? Is that what I wanted? Or did I write it because I know it's going to be read into the future? I mean, I've had books come out that at the time nobody bought, and then like I'm still receiving royalties from them because they keep selling, because people discover them. I wrote the book, some of my books I wrote just because I knew it was going to be good. And I knew people wouldn't like it right away. I knew it wasn't a bestseller, but I wrote it and I asked myself, what do I want? So I don't get disappointed when I don't get something I didn't want that I wasn't aiming at in the first place. Same in politics. When they did this thing on immigration recently, where they found 2,300 kids had been separated from their parents and all the pictures of the children crying and all this stuff. And I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. What do they want? Because that's the other question you have to ask. What does the person talking to you want? Because there are plenty of children, thousands and thousands, millions of children crying at any given moment. And they're the ones focusing the cameras on these particular children. So what do they want? Do they want open borders? In that case, listen, I don't want the children separated from their parents. I want things to be handled well. But in that case, it's not a crisis, because what they're trying to do is manipulate me into getting what they want. And that's why I was talking earlier about character assassination. When somebody says to you, I oppose socialism, the answer that you slept with a hooker when you were married, that's not an answer. That's not an answer to I oppose socialism. The answer is, well, socialism is good because blank, and it's going to remain blank because you got no argument, right? But the thing is, character assassination is not an answer to a philosophical question. There are things that people do when they violate the law, when they violate certain norms of behavior. They are things that absolutely disqualify them for public office. But since we know, as I pointed out earlier this week, since we know from the experience of Teddy Kennedy, not to mention Bill Clinton, but Teddy Kennedy especially, we know they don't care. The left doesn't care about character. We ask ourselves, what do they want and what do I want? Now, here's the thing. I've said this a lot, but it's important. I want freedom. And when I say that, I feel I don't explain that enough. That doesn't mean I can do anything I want. I can, run around punching people in the head or live any lifestyle. Freedom is part of a network, a community, a political entity that allows me to think and speak and do what I want, as long as I don't physically harm somebody else, as long as I'm not immediately harming someone else. I can say anything I want as long as I don't threaten death to someone, and I can think anything I want, and I can do almost anything I want, but I have to consider, am I harming the structure? Am I harming the structure that preserves my freedom? So if I have a child out of wedlock and I can't pay for that child, somebody's going to have to pay for that child. That means I'm taking away somebody else's money, which means I'm taking somebody else's time, which means I'm owning somebody else's life. I don't want to own somebody else's life because I don't want somebody to own my life. So my freedom depends on your freedom, and that means I have to act responsibly in ways that don't call on you to sacrifice your life to pay for me. That's why all these free things that people are like to talk about. Free college. There is no free college. It just means stealing from somebody else, taking their money, which is their time, which is their life. You haven't got the right to do that. So in order to be free, I have to act in a certain way. Now, I know the left does not want to be free. They do not want me to be free. They want to be able to tell me what to think, when I can say certain things, what kinds of things I can say. And that's what I want to stop. That's what I'm here to oppose. It's not everybody on the left, obviously. It is the people that we see at the top who really want the government to be in charge. And they say it. They say it. When you cut back regulations, they protest. When you say we're going to obey the Constitution, they protest. We know that this is what they want. So that is the argument we're having. We're not having an argument about Donald Trump. I do not care. So yesterday, Michael Cohen released a secret tape. The lawyer taped his client's conversations. And the thing is, the tape is a little bit unclear, but it's essentially saying that Trump slept with this Playboy model, Karen McDougal, and she was going to sell her story to the tabloids, and he wanted to buy the right to the story so that the story wouldn't come out, because it was just like 2 months, I think, before the election. Here's just an excerpt of the tape. You can hear how, it's non-decisive, but I'll talk about it after you play it.
I need to open up a company for the transfer of all of that info regarding our friend David, so that I'm going to do that right away. I've actually come up and I've spoken to Alan Weisselberg about how to set the whole thing up with
So what are we going to pay?
Funding. Yes. And it's all the stuff. All the stuff, because you never know where that company, you never know where he's going to be.
Gets it by
Correct. So I'm all over that, and I spoke to Alan about it when it comes time for the financing, which will be.
Listen, what financing?
We'll have to pay you. So
Don't pay with cash.
No. I got no.
Just to underscore the irony here, when I say that I know that the left doesn't care about character, the guy defending Michael Cohen is Lanny Davis. Lanny Davis, who defended Clinton during the proceedings about the Monica Lewinsky thing. Well, he doesn't care, but here he is talking. This is cut number 5.
Everybody heard just now Donald Trump say the word cash after Michael Cohen mentioned financing, when Mr. Giuliani and Mr. Trump, through Mr. Giuliani, accused my client, Mr. Cohen, of saying the word cash. And I posted a tweet at the time, and I said, wait for the tapes. Richard Nixon couldn't spin the tape that did him in, and there's no way that Mr. Giuliani, who knows from being U.S. attorney, the only people who use cash are drug dealers and mobsters. Cash is not what you do. And it was Michael Cohen who said, no. And Donald Trump, despite what Rudy Giuliani said publicly, the tape contradicts Mr. Giuliani, and the word cash is heard by everyone.
Now, just remember how I started talking about what do I want. That's what I'm looking at this. I'm thinking, what do I want? I want my freedom. So you're telling me that this tape reveals that Donald Trump banged a Playboy model and then wanted to pay to keep her story secret before the election. I mean, call me a feather and blow me away, right? I mean, you are telling me that Donald Trump has a bad character? You're trying to assassinate Donald Trump? You can't assassinate his character. His character sucks. He has a terrible character. I mean, the stuff he said about Ted Cruz during the election, the fact that he fired a guy like Rex Tillerson using a tweet that he used to brag about sleeping with other men's wives. By the way, I don't say this in a judgmental tone. I spent the first 20 plus years of my life practically insane. I've done terrible things. I've done things that wake me up at night sweating. I'm not I don't pass judgment on anybody about this stuff. But, I tried to become a better man. I think I have become a better man. I think I put that old guy away. I think I put him down, basically. I think I killed him. But Donald Trump has been the same guy all his life. All his life. We knew who he was. And the wonderful, weird thing about Donald Trump is his crappy character protects my freedom. Why? His crappy character protects my freedom because every time somebody gets up and does something on behalf of freedom, the left assassinates him. They don't care about Bill Clinton. They don't care about Teddy Kennedy. But George W. Bush, Dan Rather, sacrificed his career to get a 35-year-old plus story about him going AWOL in the National Guard. Like, who cares? He sacrificed his career to anything he could do to assassinate that man's character. Mitt Romney, they assassinated his character, but they don't care about Bill Clinton. They don't care about Teddy Kennedy. They don't care about anybody on the left. So when they try to assassinate Trump's character, they can't. He's bulletproof because we already know what a bad guy he is. His badness, his personal badness, protects my freedom. It is a weird, weird thing. So George Will, who, I always kind of respected George Will. I've always, Andrew Breitbart used to say about George Will that he was a Republican from the days when Republicans were happy to be in the minority. There's a long, long period of time when Republicans just had a very comfortable, I think it was like 38 senator minority. They could never get anything done, but they could complain a lot. And the kind of general idea, just the feeling in the air, was that the Democrats were going to own the Senate forever, and that was the way it was. And that was George Will's Republican Party. Now, when Republicans are a living, breathing entity actually accomplishing things through Donald Trump and his bad character, George Will hates Donald Trump, and he has become a bit, just a tad of a pompous ass. I hate to attack the guy because I actually have respected him in the past, but really it's absurd. But anyway, he's on Lawrence O'Donnell's show. But he makes the point that when Lanny Davis compares this nonsense, this little nonsensical story, which is blowing up because it's the summer and they haven't got anything, and they don't want to cover the fact that North Korea is actually disassembling one of its nuclear sites. It's like nice. Now, because of Donald Trump, the North Koreans are not going to blow up the Democrats so that the Democrats can complain about Donald Trump's sex life. That's basically that's basically the absurdity of summer news, okay? But even George Will comes out and says, yes, Donald Trump, horrible, horrible fellow, but comparing him to Nixon is absurd. This is cut number 2.
Well, I'm hearing redundant evidence that Mr. Trump is a seedy man whose incontinent sexual appetites get him into trouble with seedy women. Now, this is not news at this point in his presidency. I'm not hearing anything remotely like, you refer to earlier tapes, the tape in which Richard Nixon says, well, let's get the CIA to lean on the FBI to cover up a criminal conspiracy. In the one case, Donald Trump was a private citizen when that tape was made. Richard Nixon was president of the United States. I'm also hearing something else on the part of people analyzing this, and that is an attempt to turn all of this into a campaign finance violation. We really do not want, Lawrence, to go down the road where we say anything that happens that can be helpful to an ongoing political campaign should be monetized and counted as a contribution, and therefore contribute to the criminalization of American politics. I think that's a terrible way to go. There are lots of ways of judging Donald Trump without getting into that swamp.
What's really interesting, and George Will doesn't mention it because he's on MSNBC, and if he had mentioned it, it would have been like Thunderball, the James Bond movie. His chair would have opened up and there would have been sparks and he would have disappeared in a puff of black smoke. What he didn't mention is all those things that Nixon was doing, Barack Obama, whatever the hell his name was doing. It's hard to remember now because his legacy is just kind of like, it's almost like the empty breeze just blowing past our studio. But, Obama was doing all that stuff. He was spying on Trump. He was using the FBI. He was using the CIA. Obama did it all, the IRS. So all that stuff that was not on this tape about Donald Trump buying off the babe, which I got to be honest with you, there's some, when you listen to the tape, it's really hard to hear what Trump is saying. It's hard to hear whether he's saying no cash or use cash. It is difficult to hear. I'm convinced he was doing this. Trump can deny it all he wants. That's who he is. That's who he is. Again, when the billionaire Playboy Club, gathers together, they would throw him out if he weren't sleeping, cheating on his wife with Playboy models and buying them off. That's what they do. But the thing is, what Will should be asking himself, what George Will should really be asking himself, is why does it take a man of this kind of character to do the great things that Trump has been doing, the cutting back of regulations, the appointment of great Supreme Court justices and other justices, the tax cutting, the typical thing. I mean, as Henry Olsen pointed out yesterday, the things that Donald Trump is doing are mainstream Republican American things. They are down-home American things that people support. Why does it take an outlandish man like this to accomplish it? It's because they have turned the press into a character assassination machine. And you either have to be perfect, which not many of, I may be, but not many of us is perfect, right? Or you have to be such a bad cat at this point that the stuff just rolls off you because we already know it.